what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Hi, and thank you for joining us today for the Caregiver Community. This is a forum where we hold conversations about the joys as well as the challenges of caring for our aging parents and for ourselves. My name is Jane Everson, and I'm here today with my co-host, Frances Hall. How are you today, Frances?
I'm great. Thanks, Jane.
I'm glad to hear that. Frances and I began the Caregiver Community because we are two of an estimated 31 million adults in the United States, people just like our listeners out there who are caring for our aging parents or other family members, but are also caring for ourselves. In today's session, we're going to be talking about what I think is one of the most difficult conversations associated with aging. Certainly one of the most difficult I have ever had and continue to have with my parents. I've also had the conversation with several of my friends, and no doubt one day I'll be having this conversation with my husband, or perhaps he'll be having it with me. The topic is not sex ed, but it's driving a car. Our guest today is Ms. Miriam Young. Miriam has a master's degree in occupational therapy, and she's a driver rehabilitation specialist. And we're going to be talking a lot more about the credentials and background that go into being a driver rehabilitation specialist. Miriam works here in Hickory, North Carolina for Fry Regional Hospital. Thank you for joining us today, Miriam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us for this really important topic in the caregiver community.
And it is important, and you know that as well as we do. But Miriam, one of the most dreaded conversations, as Jane said, that aging parents and adult children anticipate is the one about, well, Mom, well, Dad, think it's time to give up the car keys. So let's begin with sort of who are you and what are you about? What is the role of a driver rehabilitation specialist? I've never known of this.
All right. Well, a driver rehabilitation specialist, you primarily find those persons being occupational therapists. And there are other people getting into the field, but occupational therapists do a great job being driver rehabilitation specialists because we do have a medical background. There is specific training that you need to go into this field. For example, I took a week-long course at a community mobility services in Florida with two occupational therapists who are highly trained in this field. And also, I took a 2-week course with our DMV here in North Carolina. And because the place I work, we are actually a driving school, so I am actually a driving instructor.
So you can teach 16-year-olds or 80-year-olds.
Exactly. I stick to the older crowd, but that is correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you can also become certified after you have hours as a driver and rehabilitation specialist, and you can take a national board exam and become a certified driving rehabilitation specialist.
Okay. So we should be looking for someone who is certified if we were trying to find that kind of service to help us with a family member.
Yes, a DRS or a certified driving rehabilitation specialist, which is a CDRS. Yes.
Okay, great.
Gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm. So talk a little more about what a driving rehabilitation specialist can do to assist drivers who are aging, and how might our listeners go about finding someone in their community?
All right. Well, you can find a driving rehabilitation specialist by going to the website for the Association for Driver Rehabilitation Specialists. It's called ADAD, ADED. It's an international organization that's actually headquartered here in Hickory, North Carolina. And you can go to their website, which is www.aded.net, and you can locate a driver rehabilitation specialist across the world.
Interesting.
Wow.
And do most communities have someone who is certified?
Well,
or most larger communities?
Most larger communities do, but they are sometimes difficult to come by. I know here in Hickory, the closest one, I believe, is Asheville, and then to Greensboro area.
Wow. Okay.
So it could be that any given state would have several, but you might have to actually travel somewhere
yes, ma'am.
to
That
get
is
the
correct.
test. Okay. Let's talk about what maybe is a misconception, maybe it's true. Does aging impact driving? Is there a certain age at which people should be giving up driving? And what's the relationship between aging and driving?
Well, the driving rehabilitation specialist is going to evaluate a senior's ability to drive and determine if he or she's medically fit. And yes, aging can affect driving. As we all age, changes occur in multiple areas, which could make driving unsafe.
But you're not necessarily a bad driver because you got your Medicare card in
Exactly,
the mail
exactly.
yesterday.
So that's why we're going to look at different areas, which include your vision, cognition, and physical functioning.
Okay. Vision, cognition, and physical functioning.
Yes.
Okay, talk more about each of those.
All right. Well, vision. Vision is very important. 95% of the information we receive as drivers is through our vision.
Sure.
So if you have issues in this area, that could be a really big
Yeah,
deal.
it makes sense, although we probably don't realize how much vision really impacts our driving.
Exactly.
And of course, vision is associated with aging.
Exactly. And what we look at with vision, we look at a lot of different areas. There's something called acuity, or the clearness of how you see. If you cannot clearly see, you may not be able to read a road sign till you get right up on it. So that could be dangerous.
And then we're switching lanes, trying to do whatever we're trying to do.
Exactly, last minute.
Right,
because you
right.
didn't know a road was ending or that you
Right.
needed to exit.
Right.
Another area in vision is field of vision, or what we call peripheral vision. And that's the vision when you're looking straight that you see on the side. So if you're going down the road and you're paying attention to what's in front of you, you use your peripheral vision to see that ball run out into the road or that child
to
getting ready
change
to run.
lanes.
So that way you constantly know what's going on all over you. So if you have problems in those areas, that can be an issue. Another area is contrast sensitivity. As you age, a lot of people get cataracts. And with cataracts come cloudy vision. So on a day when it's cloudy outside and the sky is gray, people that have difficulty with contrast sensitivity have a hard time telling that a gray car is coming down the road with the gray sky in the background.
Oh, of
Interesting.
course. Sure.
So that's another area that we look at. Also, glare recovery, scanning, and tracking. Are you able to see everything you need to see in a timely
So
manner?
glare, for example, might be a difficulty driving at night.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Or even the sun when it's really bright outside.
That's what I was thinking, even a glare off the windshield in front of you,
Exactly.
sort of thing.
Interesting.
And another area is called visual perceptual skills. And that's not exactly your eye, but how your brain perceives what you see. So if you're going down the road and like many signs, sometimes a tree limb may be sticking in front of it. So if you're only seeing half of a stop sign, our brain can perceive that that's a full stop sign because we know what the rest of it looks like. But somebody with visual perceptual difficulties may only see half the sign and really not recognize that that's a stop sign.
So that's not necessarily a physiological problem with the eye,
It's
but
your
between the
brain.
eye and the brain.
Mhm, exactly, how you perceive what you're seeing. So when we think about all of your vision, there are a few warning signs that I want to tell y'all about today that you can think about with your parents or your loved ones or anybody you know that might be having difficulty with their vision that might affect their driving.
Great.
And those include, just like we spoke about, poor glare recovery, inability to detect traffic light colors. You know, are you having a hard time telling, is it red, yellow, green? Change in depth perception. Can you tell how far away you are to another vehicle? And that's huge when you're parking, how close you're getting to the car in front of you. When you're
Backing out of the garage.
When you're backing out of the garage, yes.
Sounds like a story.
Especially when you're pulling out onto a road because you don't want to pull out too late and cause a collision.
That's a problem we think about a lot, I think, with young drivers, but it certainly could be a problem with older drivers as
Exactly. Also, the inability to read signs at a distance, like we spoke about, collisions, near misses, difficulty driving at night, which I think is really common with older adults, and problems with vision in inclement weather. So if it's really rainy outside or snowy, is that causing problems? And there are times where I do get a client and I don't really know what's going on with their vision, but I know something's going on. So I will have them go see a vision specialist to verify how their visual functioning is.
So you might be working with an ophthalmologist in this case instead of a primary
and getting
care
their
physician.
recommendation of what they think.
Okay.
Okay. Talk a little more, if you will, when someone comes to you, what could they expect?
Okay. Well, not only would I look at their vision, but another area I would look at would be cognition. And as we age, it takes more and more time to process information. But on the other hand, older drivers have something that new drivers do not have, and that is they have mature judgment, years of driving experience, and good driving habits.
And that's important for us to remember.
Sure.
It is, because sometimes we think about older driver, bad driver. No, not necessarily. They have these, this mature judgment, years and driving experience and driving habits, which can compensate for some of their diminished cognitive abilities. So,
excellent point.
Well, some other warning signs I want you to look at, and these involve cognition, is if you see this in someone you know is driving too slowly, if you don't observe signs or signals, difficulty interpreting traffic situations and predicting changes. And this can happen a lot when someone's driving a familiar route, but there's a detour. Do they know what to do? If they get off course, can they find their way back? Failure to yield, easily being frustrated or confused, frequently getting lost. That's a huge thing you want to look at.
Oh, sure.
So in familiar places.
Exactly, even in familiar places. If you need instructions from your passengers, if you're constantly saying, hey, Mom, slow down. Hey, Mom, don't forget your turn signal. Hey, Mom, remember you're supposed to turn there.
Or if your spouse thinks you need those directions.
Exactly. And not just being a backseat driver. Poor road position. Are you in the center of the lane, or are you constantly riding the yellow line? Or are you constantly riding the edge of the line? Those are things to look at. And driving in the wrong direction down streets. A lot of our downtowns.
Even in Hickory, where that was a problem.
Even for younger people.
Exactly.
But I guess the difference is you're aware when you make a wrong turn.
Yes, where they aren't, and they continue
That's a good
to go
point.
because they don't have the insight to see, hey, why am I the only car going this way?
Right. I want to go back to something you said earlier, though, about driving slowly, because I hear people talking about, well, I know that my reflexes are not as quick, and so I drive slower. What you're saying, though, is that's a real sign that maybe it's time to take a look at this driving
Exactly.
thing.
If your reflexes are slower, what's going on? Let's look at that and see. Now, if you're going 5 miles under, that's not exactly what I mean. But when you're going a lot less, like if you're going 35 on the interstate, that's a problem. That's a safety issue.
Yeah, or taking a long time to make a left-hand turn across traffic.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So reaction time as well as
Yes, and we'll speak about that later on too.
Right. Okay.
And the other area that changes as we age, like we all know, it's happened to all of us, is our physical functioning. I'm talking about like your impaired strength, your movement and sensation in your arms, your legs, your feet, and your neck. If you're not able to move your legs and your arms and your feet, or if you're not able to feel, if you have neuropathy that's progressed to a point where you really cannot feel what you're touching or how you're moving, what we call not just light touch, but proprioceptive sense, knowing where your foot is in space, that could be a huge problem. Because
and I know that's a problem associated with diabetes, which of course is also associated with aging.
Exactly. And also we want to look at impaired coordination. Can you coordinate your arms and legs? Can you slow down with the gas while both arms are working together to turn the steering wheel? So there's a lot about driving that people don't realize till you really break it down to all the components.
So really, vision, cognition, and physical aspects are breaking that down. That shows you how complex driving really is, doesn't it?
And including what you just spoke about, which is impaired reaction time.
Right. I'm even thinking, as we're talking about not just coordination, but even just the physical ability, such as a knee replacement, a hip replacement, and being able to put brakes on quickly, and when you need to, and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then we want to look at warning signs for physical functioning. What are things that you might see that let you know an older driver may have difficulty driving? And those would be difficulty turning your head to check blind spots. If you can't turn your head or compensate with your trunk with turning, you can't see your blind spots, and you may, when you're changing lanes, pull out in front of a car. Also, confusing the gas and brake with your foot. And I think we've all heard on the news how an elderly person has ran into a local business.
So tragic.
Or into someone's house. So, difficulty maintaining grasp on the steering wheel. Difficulty reaching for secondary controls. If they're having a hard time, they may have difficulty reaching for the turn signal and
So if you have maybe perhaps pain or arthritis or some kind of stiffness. Okay.
But there are ways that you can compensate for those, but that might be telling you need to get in for a driving eval. And also, some older patients fatigue easily with driving, and just going down the road totally wears them out to a point where they can't concentrate on driving because they're so tired.
Well, and driving and riding can be exhausting.
Again, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So beside the warning signs that you've just told us about, are there any other warning signs that we should be thinking about when we're informally, if you will, assessing our parents or our family members driving?
First of all, I would look at, do they have any medical conditions that might warrant an assessment? Is there anything that's triggering what you're seeing? So, for example, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, a stroke, an amputation, diabetes, arthritis, MS, or Parkinson's disease. Some other warning signs to look at would be, does your parent observe signs, signals, or other traffic when they're driving? Or do they just totally ignore everything and just go straight through a stop sign? Do they need help or instruction from you when driving? Again, are they slow or do they make poor decisions? Does it take them forever to make a decision what they're going to do? Are they easily frustrated or confused? Do they frequently get lost even in familiar areas? Inappropriate driving speeds. We spoke about driving too slow, but are they driving too fast through a neighborhood that they should only be going 25 where they're going 45?
Or maybe erratically, fast, slow.
Exactly. Poor road positioning, wide turns, or are they having accidents or near misses?
Gotcha. Okay, this is all really good information. So here we are, and we know, we've heard this, and we are identifying some issues with mom or dad, and we think, okay, we really need to have the talk. How do we go about that? What kind of strategies, what kind of tips can you give us to help us be able to open that conversation and to have that conversation with our parent?
Well, this will probably be the hardest question for me to answer. But first of all, I would remember this is a very sensitive subject. Driving, to most people, unless you live in a larger city where you take public transportation, it's all about independence. And we've got to understand that and know this is a touchy subject for most. I would sit down and really have an open, honest conversation with your parent that I am concerned about your driving because of X, Y, and Z. And see if they can understand your points and see how their insight is.
Do you think it would be helpful to even begin the conversation by asking them if they have any concerns about their driving?
Yes, because I do find some older adults who will tell you what their concerns are. And if their insight is there, that's always a good sign that maybe there can be training or adaptive equipment added. So that is a possibility. Many times their doctors will also be concerned, and they'll be the ones who initiate the driving evaluation.
And that would make a lot of sense if the doctor had diagnosed the parent with having some of those conditions you talked about. But in other cases, certainly the doctor's probably not going to be a passenger with mom and dad, or maybe even see them driving into the parking lot. So they may have to go on other kinds of behaviors they see in the doctor's office.
If they come in and maybe they're showing some signs of confusion or not taking their medicine regularly, they might start having some questions about their cognition.
And along those lines, I'm thinking, there are times that probably we visit a parent and we do all the driving because they just say, oh, well, I'll just ride with you. And it sounds like it would be a good idea for us occasionally to say to them, well, no, let me just ride with you.
Or go go in their garage and check out the car. Look for new dents or scratches and ask them where they got them from. And that you're exactly right. Get in the car with them and see what's going on.
Hi, I'm 2013 Greater Hickory Kia Classic Champion Michael Allen. Please join us at Rock Barn Golf and Spa for the 12th Annual Greater Hickory Kia Classic, October 13th through 19th. Watch me defend my title against two-time Masters winner Bernhard Langer, two-time Hickory winner Jay Haas, Kenny Perry, Fred Funk, Champions Tour rookie Lee Jansen, and a fantastic field of Champions Tour players. Weekly grounds badges are just $50. Individual tickets are $20 per day. Get your tickets today at GreaterHickoryKiaClassic.com.
If we decide that a more formal assessment might be helpful, what would we do and what would we expect in that kind of assessment?
Well, first of all, you need to have a doctor's order for a drive-in evaluation. So that's the first thing you would want to obtain. The next thing you'd want to do is go to the website I told you about.
And back on that, could
Yes.
that be a physician or an ophthalmologist or anyone who's treating your doctor who is a medical
Yes.
professional? Okay.
So once you get your doctor's order, either they can locate you a driving specialist because they're probably familiar with one in your area, or you can go to a website, which I just mentioned before, www.aded.net, and you can look up a driving specialist in your area or your parents' area. And once that's done, you can schedule the driving evaluation. And I know at Fry Regional Medical Center, our driving evaluations are fee for service, and that means that insurance does not cover the driving eval, and it is an out-of-pocket expense.
But probably some really wise expenditure.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what happens during an assessment?
Okay. Well, the day you come in, I will take your parent's driver's license number and check with the DMV, and in this case in North Carolina I call Raleigh, and I find out is their driver's license active or inactive, are they on medical review, what's going on with their driver's license. The next thing I do is that I would review medical history and medications, because this will tell me a lot of what to look for in the client if there's anything specific I really need to look at. I also will bring the client into my office, and if their family's there and if the client's okay with that, I will bring their family in and interview them together. And most of my clients are totally fine, if their family chirps in and lets me know things. Other ones want to come by themselves and just give me
Their view.
Exactly. But I appreciate it when families come, and so I can see the whole picture.
So license review, medical review of their medications and whatever diagnoses they might have, and an interview with the person and perhaps with family members.
Exactly. And then that's when, after that, I start my in-clinic assessment, where I look at their vision, like I spoke of. I have a vision machine I use, and then I look at their hearing, because that's an important thing we didn't talk about. But if you can't hear, you can't hear cars have, paramedics coming by or fire trucks or someone blowing their horn at you. Insight to disability. I think this is a really big one where, especially as someone's cognition declines, they don't realize that they have impairments, and they think they can do what they want.
So you're checking to see if they are even aware that they might have some cognitive decline
Yes.
or issues. Okay, good.
Another one is, like I spoke about, the visual perceptual skills, cognition, perception, your neuromuscular status, which is looking at your arms and your legs and your body, your physical state, and brake reaction time. And I have a brake reaction timer.
So you actually have a simulated brake, and you can see how quickly somebody
Yes.
reacts.
It has when you press the gas, a green light comes on, and then randomly the red light will come on. You have to hit the brake as quickly as you can, and it measures that time. And I take an average.
So they're not actually getting into a car and you're driving around with them? It's
Not
that.
yet.
Oh, okay.
Once we go through the clinic portion, and if I feel that it's warranted to get them out on the road, we will. And we will get in. Fry has their own driving car, and it's outfitted with an instructor's brake and special mirrors. So I'll pick up the client.
Just like we had when we were 16 learning to drive.
Exactly. So I'll pick the client up at the front door, and we'll drive to a local empty parking lot, and I will let that client get adjusted to the car, just the seat and the steering wheel and the mirrors, so it fits them. And we'll practice in the parking lot first to get them accustomed to the car. And once they're accustomed to the car, we'll go out and drive, and we'll start in just a residential area, and we will progress as warranted to a city driving and even the interstate.
So it really is pretty individualized
It
then.
is.
Yeah.
Everything we do is very individualized. I don't have a client come in and I don't look at an age and I don't look at a diagnosis and I have my mind made up. I really look at the person holistically, and that's from my background as being an occupational therapist.
Sure.
We know no illness, no person responds the same way to anything. So we want to really look at that person as an individual.
And so if someone comes in, how long typically would it take to go through the whole assessment?
It takes an average of 3 hours.
Okay. So a good chunk of time
Yes.
to allocate,
Yes.
but really, really important
Really very
time.
comprehensive.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would imagine in some cases you might know immediately from perhaps the vision that the person isn't even going to warrant the on-the-road driving. And in other cases, there might be some red flags, but you want to really see what they do in an actual car.
Exactly. And in talking about vision, every state has their own requirements visually about what someone must be able to see. So a lot will tell me that's one of the very first things I assess after interviewing them is their vision.
And so there are times then that you never actually get on the road with someone, that in clinic you're able to determine it's really not safe.
Exactly. If I find through my assessments that they're what I would say scoring low on certain things, I already know where they are at.
What happens?
But I try to give everybody a chance on the road if that's warranted.
If it makes sense.
Yeah, if it makes sense.
That makes sense. So what happens after the assessment is completed? What do you do, and what are the next steps?
Well, I go through all of my assessments and I make a recommendation to the ordering physician, and I type up a very comprehensive driving evaluation just so they can see everything that we've looked at. And I'll give my recommendations, and then they can go from there and decide what to do. I'm not the one who, says, no, you can't drive. I can recommend, and then the ordering physician will
So you give
decide.
the recommendations
Yes.
to the physician who's made the orders.
Exactly. I don't just give a yes to driving or no to driving. I, can say, yes, they're fine the way they are to continue to drive, or I think they'd be okay to drive, but we should give them certain restrictions, such as no interstate driving, daylight driving only, things like that. Maybe a radius driving from their home.
And that might be very comforting for a parent to know going into this as well, that it's not a black or white yes
Absolutely.
or no, that sometimes there will just be strategies and restrictions and guidance
Exactly.
on driving more safely.
Right. So if a son or daughter is recognizing there may be some issues, then they really ought to go through their doctor to get that recommendation for the assessment.
Yes, exactly.
Not just call you up and
Yes.
say,
I can't do the driving evaluation without a doctor's order.
Okay.
So, like I was saying, I have different recommendations I can give, and some other ones are if they have the cognitive ability, there may be training, there could be adaptive driving equipment, or I may feel like it's time for them to retire from driving.
And what a nice way of saying it, retire from driving. What are some of the equipment, what is some of the equipment that might be used?
It's something like a steering knob. If someone's having difficulty using one of their arms, maybe they've had a stroke in the past and they're so many months out and their arm is just not coming back the way they wanted to, but everything else is fine, they could use a steering knob to help steer the wheel with one hand, and that works well. Also, people with difficulty turning their heads, their neck, for checking blind spots, we can maybe get them mirrors so they can see their blind spots without having to turn their heads.
And are there specific, we mentioned a minute ago being 16 and taking driver's ed, are there driver's education opportunities for older drivers?
There could be training if they have the cognitive ability to retain and to learn from that.
But again, that the driver's rehab specialist would know that.
Yes, and they could train.
Gotcha.
Or they could recommend maybe to go to a driving school and just brush up on driving skills.
Right.
You mentioned the concept, which I also love, retire from driving, and I think I heard you say previously that you'd made a decision to retire from riding roller coasters. So I like the idea that at different
and
ages,
backflips and handstands.
at different ages, we might just retire from certain
Exactly.
things. If we and you make a decision that retiring from driving is the appropriate thing for a parent, what kinds of counseling, what kinds of strategies, what sort of other things are there available? We know that driving is, that's the epitome of independence for most adults.
Exactly. So I like to stress to the client that, I recommend they retire from driving, and why. They're not medically fit to drive, and I think that's a good way to say it. Medically, maybe their physical, their visual, or their cognitive functioning. And I also like to counsel the client, and if the family member is available, for alternative methods for community mobility, such as family members driving them around. A lot of times the family's already driving them 95% of the time. So just let them continue to drive you, but now 100% of the time.
Making it an official decision.
Exactly. And I find that a lot. Their friends who are still capable of driving. A lot of times church vans will come pick you up for Wednesday night services,
Right.
Sunday services. And there is public transportation. For example, here in Hickory, it's called the Greenway, and there is a van that will come pick you up. You just have to call and make an appointment and pay the fee. Mm-hmm. And I also try to educate them on other alternatives, such as some smaller pharmacies may deliver your medications if they're concerned about going to pick up their medicines.
It's a wonderful service.
Exactly. Have medications mailed to them. Mm-hmm. And there are local grocery stores that will deliver your groceries. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those are all things to look into.
And of course, there are non-nursing or non-medical organizations that a parent can pay for someone
Exactly.
to
Sure.
provide them transportation.
Exactly. Sure. So there's a lot of different avenues to look at.
Mm-hmm. Miriam, this has been just really fabulous information.
Certainly
lots
is.
to take in and lots of things to think about. Any final words of wisdom that you want to make sure our listeners know before we adjourn, or resources that we should know about?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just like to stress that a lot of the driving rehabilitation specialists are occupational therapists. Their background is, and we really want all the individuals to remain as independent as possible for as long as possible. I think that's important for people to know when they're coming into this.
Absolutely.
These driving evaluations are very comprehensive. They're very individualized. And we don't just look at the person's diagnosis and their age and make a decision. We look at the person. But if you are really concerned about maybe even yourself or your loved one or your parent, you should really look at getting an occupational therapy driving evaluation. And something that I've been told, I've heard this before, and it's something I've had to tell clients is, driving is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. So, but again, if you're in the local area of Hickory, North Carolina, and would like a driving evaluation, we do offer that at Fry Regional Medical Center, and our number is 828-315-5354.
And why don't you just repeat that number again?
All right, it's 828-315-5354.
And if you're not in the Hickory area, why don't you repeat that website
and
again?
then you can go to the ADED website. It's www.aded.net.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Miriam, this has been great. Thank you for listening, everyone, to
Thank
the
you.
caregiver community. I hope that you've enjoyed, and most importantly, we hope you've learned today about some new things about caregiving, caregivers, and driving. This program is part of the MESH network of online shows and podcasts. You may learn more about the MESH and check out the other programs available for free at www.themesh, and that's mesh.tv. On that site, you may also send Francis and I a question or a recommendation for future show topics using the Contact Us button. We also encourage you to find our show on Apple iTunes, where you may subscribe to the show and make sure you receive all future episodes sent to you automatically. You'll find a link to the MESH website on our ACAP community website as well. Francis, where may people go for more information on ACAP community?
For more information on ACAP community, you can go to a couple of places. Either the website, as Jane had talked about, www.acapcommunity.com, and that is ACAP that's Adult Children of Aging Parents, so www.acapcommunity.com, or call us toll-free at 1-877-599-ACAP or 877-599-2227, or just email us at info@acapcommunity.com.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much, Miriam.
Thank you for having me on.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.